Hi, I'm Ann Butera. Thanks so much for joining me in my studio today. We're going to head out to the garden in just a minute, but before that, I just wanted to touch base with you a little bit. There was a day that I was in a horrible mood and I couldn't focus on anything. And so what I did was I went outside and I looked around the garden. I searched for beauty, and of course, I found it. This was at the end of September. I simply walked through the garden, noticing colors and shapes and the beautiful abundance packed into my tiny little yard. It can be so easy to go through our days without really looking, without noticing what's right here in front of us. I know it is for me. I'm busy or distracted. I'm thinking about something else, my seemingly never ending to do list, the heaviness of the news, all of it, all the time. We can't escape. But I keep reminding myself to be present, to look and see and notice. Sometimes all it takes is a few minutes spent doing nothing but looking, coming back to the present moment again and again, remembering that there's so much beauty in the world. And it's important to make time for this, even if it feels like I should be doing something else. Maybe I'm not going to be accomplishing anything tangible by doing this. I'm not fixing the world's problems or crossing things off my to-do list, but it's important work. I recently listened to a podcast from Emily Jeffords where she described creativity as being a renewable resource. Isn't that a beautiful thought? But we also need to remember that a renewable resource needs to be renewed. So this day in the garden helped me to renew my creativity. It helped me to shift my mood, and I was able to come back to myself and back to my studio with more energy and focus. Sometimes that's all it takes. And yes, I'm savoring my bountiful garden right now and trying to soak up all the colors and beauty of the end of this gardening season before it's gone. But I know I can find beauty in nature no matter what the season. As autumn progresses and my garden finishes for the year, I'll keep looking. But that's another thing about being present. It's not about what's next and thinking about what's next. It's about what's right now, seeing what's right in front of me. And right now, it's still abundant flowers. It's rich colors, even with some things finished or fading. And I'm trying to make sure that I can savor every moment. It's almost the middle of October, and my garden is still going strong. And I have so many dahlias. They are bringing me so much joy. You can see my painting table is filled with dahlias right now. I have colors mixed and I'm ready to begin a couple of paintings inspired by all these beautiful flowers. And of course, that's one of the wonderful parts about my art practice. It can help me slow down and pay attention. But sometimes the concentration needed for one of my really detailed watercolor paintings is just more than I can handle, or more than I have the energy for. Or there are so many other things pulling me in different directions that it's hard to sit down and work on a painting. And that is one of the reasons that I love my sketchbooks so much. I recently shared a sketchbook tour of my 20th filled sketchbook with you. And that practice of working in a sketchbook, every time I sit down to work in a sketchbook, sometimes it's really hard to sit down and make myself work on something that could be seen as unimportant because it's not a job that I have to finish. It's just something, most of the time, it's just something for me. But once I do, I always feel so much better. And that working a sketchbook is a perfect way of being very present. And on days that I want to be outside in the garden and I can't keep my butt in the chair in my studio, grabbing my sketchbook and going outside is a perfect compromise. I just released a new class on Skillshare, all about loosening up in your sketchbook. And part of the reason that I focused on loosening up and doing these quick, easy, less detailed sketches that only use one color is because that's a perfect way to simplify and get focused and really find joy in the process. I will share more about that class in a minute. And I also have a free bonus for you, and that is very similar to everything that I shared in my new class. And it's a bonus lesson for you. You can watch it for free here. So I'm going to grab my sketchbook. I'll tell you a little bit about the sketchbook and then we will head outside. This is the sketchbook that I'm going to be using in that demo. And I've been working in this for a while. This was a gift to me from my friend Dana, and I started it in September of 2021. So I've been working on this one for a while too. I may share a tour of it or part of it when I finish it, but it still has a long way to go. Dana gifted this to me. I think she got it at Barnes and Noble. She recently shared a video that's a tour of what she's been doing in her sketchbook. Here's a little bit of that tour, and I will link to it below. I love seeing what she's up to in her sketchbooks, and she is so inspiring to me. She is one of the reasons that I'm so in love with sketchbooks today. The other thing I wanted to show you before we get started is that I'm going to be using this ink brush, and I use these ink brushes in my new class for a few of the lessons, and so I've really been enjoying playing with these, and I'm excited to show you this demo. This is the rose that I'm sketching. It's the Snow Pavement Rose. It's a rugosa. And this year I'm so lucky to get some hips from it. Most years I don't get any rose hips because of the Japanese beetles, but we've had very few this year, and that means more roses and actually some rose hips, which I find so fun to sketch and paint. So I've situated myself right by the rose for this sketch, and I've got my sketchbook on top of a little lap board, and I have my ink brush, and I'm just going to study the plant and make these loose sketches of it. When I am sketching a flower like this, I tend to work both from the outside in and from the inside out, kind of moving back and forth so that I get a balance. And I also try and get a balance of details and not details. So a loose sketch does not include everything, but I need to include enough so that it looks like what it is. So that top flower is open and almost head on. You can see the center open a little bit with those, with the stamens. And now in front of it and squished next to it is another flower that you can't see into quite as well. There's a little bit of shadow there. And for my petals, some of them are fully open and you can see the entire shape. Some of them, you can just see a line. So I'm trying to include a balance of both the larger shapes, the smaller shapes, just so that it feels balanced. And with these loose sketches, it's more about capturing the feeling of your subject than trying to capture all of the details. And if there's a problem or if it's tricky, like sketching over that string, the binding string in the center of my page, that's okay. I don't get worked up about being messy or mistakes in my sketchbooks. I want to capture the feeling and also the thought of sitting out in the garden, because for me, that's a huge part of the experience too. Connecting with the plants in my garden, connecting with nature. And as a gardener and a plant nerd and a botanical painter, I want my sketches, my paintings, everything that I create to be botanically correct. It's very hard for me to create made up plants. And you can definitely find a balance with your loose sketches, a balance between botanical correctness and accuracy and the looseness of a sketch like this. Part of it is stylistic, simplifying your shapes or including just a few details. And every artist can find their own way towards this. And if you're not a huge garden and flower nerd like me and you want to make things up, that's great too. But as I said, a huge part of this for me, that brings me joy, is the act of being in the garden, the act of observing and connecting with the natural world in this way. That is just such a special thing and something that is important for all of my art, whether it's a sketchbook or a finished, very detailed painting. Even if I'm in the studio painting it, it's the connection that is so important and so special for me. So for this sketch, instead of trying to sketch the plant, I'm sketching parts of the plant to create a nice composition on my page. And of course, there are so many different ways of doing this. So for my sketch here, I am sketching parts of the plant and creating a complete composition with the different parts. So the flowers, some leaves connected to stems, stems connected to rose hips. You could certainly sketch single flowers, single leaves, single stems, the different parts separately. But here, my cluster of flowers is overlapping these stems of leaves that I'm sketching now. And that's really the fun part. And that's why you can come back to the same subject again and again and again and sketch it differently and observe different parts of it. One of the things that I always do in my art is that I I said that I don't make things up, but really I do. I look at what's in front of me and I create a composition that is not exactly what I see. It is a made up plant that doesn't exist exactly as it is in reality. And that's one of the things that is so fun for me about the process. It's about connecting, but it's also about my own creativity. And with these loose sketches, one of the things that is really important and something that I want to convey to you is that you should have fun with this process. So all those little prickles, the little tiny thorns, they were fun to make. The little centers, the stamens in the middle of the flowers, those were fun to make. The sepals on those rose hips, those were fun to exaggerate their shapes and make the shapes more interesting and whimsical, even. And so that's where our creativity comes into play, making it our own, translating what we see into a piece of art, or if that's too heavy for you to use the word art. I know some people have a hard time with that word. Think of it as play and experiments. And so I'm sorry that the the leaf is falling out of the picture here. That's one of the challenges of sketching in the garden. I'm kind of squished here between camera and plant, and I've got the lap board, which is a little bit wobbly on my lap. But that's all part of it. And that all those challenges really help me to loosen up. And I know that what I'm going to create is not going to be perfect. And when I let go of trying to create something that is exact and precise and perfect, then that's when I can truly loosen up. I'm not worried if there are mistakes. I'm not worried if my page is messy. I'm not worried if my lines are thicker than I'd like them to be. And that's one of the reasons that I chose the ink brush to demonstrate a loose sketch, because this ink brush is messy. Sometimes it's unpredictable. Sometimes the lines are thicker than I'd like them to be, or there's not as much ink in the tip, and so they're more textured. I think that adds a lot of interest to the sketches and makes them looser, it makes them more rough, but it also makes them more interesting. So for my composition here, I'm going to add some rose hips not connected to anything to fill in this space here. And you can see, or maybe you can see that the paper I'm using isn't loving the heavy application of ink. And the ink on these pages tends to bleed. But again, things like that, if the paper starts to pill up a little bit, if the paper bleeds, if there are other pages bleeding through on the page that you're working on, all of those imperfections, they help you to loosen up. So that for me, those sepals were so fun. Those little stamens were so fun. Trying to create different textures, different lights and darks with this ink brush. It is a fun process. It's about experimenting and seeing what kinds of marks I can make, about what kinds of shapes I want to create to convey my subject. I want you to play with all of those things in your sketchbook. I want you to feel free to ask yourself, what would happen if I made a mark like this? What would happen if I layered my brush? What if I made really wobbly lines? And just experiment and play. And some of what you're going to do won't work the way you hoped it would, but that is all part of the process. So I could leave this here, but I think because I'm loving those rose hips so much, I'm going to sketch some head-on rose hips. Let's celebrate the fact that I actually have some rose hips this year. They have such fun shapes. So here's some head-on. I'm creating texture with a medium like this, with the ink brush, is part of the fun for me. So dabbing at it, creating lines, veining, different thicknesses of lines, lights and darks. That makes the whole thing fun for me. And I'd like you to have fun with that too. Whatever medium you use, experiment with it. See what happens when you try using it in a different way. When you dab the tip, or when you try and make a thinner or thicker line, or a lighter or darker shape. These are a fairly new medium for me, and I'm really enjoying them. I'm enjoying the opportunity they give me to loosen up, to be less precise. And that is so freeing. That is so freeing. And that is one of the things that is so wonderful about this process. I can just grab my sketchbook, I can grab one pen, go out into the garden, and just play around, connect with nature, sit in the sun, have the bees flying around me. So I hope you will be inspired to create some pages like this. Thanks for spending time with me in my studio and garden today. I hope you are inspired to go play in your sketchbook. I would love to hear about the kinds of things you like to sketch and whether you've ever tried one of these ink brushes. Thanks again. I am wishing you so much joy. Take time to savor these days in whatever way works best for you. Until next time. Oh, and in my next video, I have a really exciting opportunity to share with you. I'm going to be talking about it on my blog on Saturday. If you wanted to go sign up for my blog to get that post emailed to you, I'll share a link. You can do that. Otherwise, wait until my next video and I'll share all about this exciting opportunity that I would love to invite you to join me with. So until then, wishing you joy. And if you'd like to join me in my new class, here's the trailer for that. Inspiration is everywhere. Look around. There's so much beauty in the world waiting for us to discover it. We are part of that magic too. And there's so much beauty we can bring to life through our creativity. But sometimes it can be hard to heed the call of our inspiration. Maybe we lack energy or confidence. Maybe we doubt our skills or our ability to follow our creativity where it leads. So many things can keep us from creating. Do you really want to let them? Hi, I'm Ann Butera. I'm a full-time artist, writer, and educator. My botanical and nature-inspired watercolor paintings bring me so much joy and connect me to the magic of our beautiful world. For a long time, fear held me back from attempting to make art. But eventually, I found the courage to teach myself how to paint. It wasn't easy and I wasn't good at first, but I stuck with it. Even now, many years later, I still go through periods of doubt and experience creative slumps. As I said, so many things can keep us from creating. But do you know what? We don't have to let them. One practice I return to again and again is keeping a sketchbook. For me, the pages of a sketchbook offer complete creative freedom. Freedom from pressure and judgment and fear. Approaching sketchbooks playfully opens up the possibilities of our creativity. Being loose and joyful with our painting and sketching is a great way to do this. That's what this class is all about. I'll help you approach the blank page with curiosity, not doubt. We'll create joyfully instead of letting pressure close us off from our creativity. Each lesson is designed to build upon the last, helping you to grow your confidence and your skills in an easy, no pressure way. I share many examples, giving you lots of ideas for how to create your own fun and playful pages. Throughout the lessons, I also offer tips to make the process easier and more fun, and give you suggestions and recommendations for loosening up, not just your art, but your attitude as well. Whether you're new to art making or just need some creative encouragement, this class will help free you from fear so you can begin filling up those sketchbook pages. So if you're ready to let go of doubt and create without pressure, grab your sketchbook and I'll see you in class. And I would love to see you in my Skillshare class. Take care. You know, I'm such a dork. In the next lesson, we're going to continue with flowers and tackle an even more complicated